Great show planned for you to wrap up this week. Welcome, everyone, to the Media Row podcast with me, Justin Miller. Like I said, great show planned. We have Drake women's basketball to talk about from last night, live at the Knapp Center as they dominated Indiana State. Drake men's basketball preview for what to expect now coming up on Sunday at the Knapp Center in their final game. We're 6 days away from St. Louis, which we'll start off the show there because I know throughout the week I've talked about how things were getting stressful with, my car and how I will get there. And I know the rush with Travis and Ross, they talked about it as well. I will be able to go. We have things figured out, and, I will get to kind of the cool news that I hinted at on Monday's show. But my car is all fixed. I actually get it today. So that takes away the car issues. And I will be able to go to St. Louis. Haven't been there since 2023 when Drake won. Didn't go last year with covering Iowa State. But yes, we have good news. I appreciate everyone sending out messages of wondering what the cool news was. I like some of the guesses. No one guessed it right, but some of them were pretty good. I liked, someone was like, please tell me it's McCollum's contract extension. And then I replied, I was like, actually, it's Taryn's contract extension. So had some fun with it last night. Appreciate everyone, though, supporting me, asking about it. So really appreciate that as we continue to grow this community of Media Row. So really appreciate everyone and really excited to get to next week because I think there's going to be some really cool things we'll be able to put out next week, not only being in Arch Madness, but just with the cool news that we have coming up. But to get to today's show, to wrap up this week, we're going to first talk about Drake women dominating Indiana State, a game that didn't start off too hot for the women, but they were able to overcome it. Then we'll get into kind of more of just Katie Dinnebeer's numbers on a national level now, not only just in the Missouri Valley, but she's starting to put up national eye-popping numbers. And then we'll get into a little bit of a preview of Drake Missouri State for Sunday. And that will wrap up our week here with Media Row. But continue to follow along on social media like you always do, because we have Drake, you and I for women's basketball on Saturday at 2 o'clock on ESPN+. So, of course, we'll be tweeting out during then. And then live from the Knapp Center on Sunday. But let's jump in to last night's game. Drake women dominate in their final home game of the season, 107-86. Dinnebeer, 35 points, 10 assists, 6 rebounds, 4 rebounds shy of a triple-double to end her final home game in a Drake uniform. Anna Miller, 14 points in her final game. Becker with 20 points as well. I love it how I made that video talking about Courtney Becker putting up 1,000 points last week and how she's just been vital to this team in seniority, leadership. But I mentioned in that video how, and I still don't think I'm wrong, but she's starting to prove me wrong. How I was like, man, she may not put up 20 points every night. She may not even be the second leading scorer every night. She, since then, has been a huge factor for this team offensively. And you had basically a slow first quarter for this team, and Becker was a huge part of them getting back into an offensive rhythm. They were finding her on her backdoor cuts. I think that's her best. Her rebounding and her ability to read defenses and know which lanes to cut into is one of her biggest assets. I think sometimes gets overlooked. But before we dive into kind of that slow start and what Drake was able to do to come out on top, let's hear from Coach Allison Pullman on the seniors in their final game as well.
Oh, of course, it's really, I have a really hard time talking about like the end of anything, especially at this point, because just trying to take it one very small baby step at a time, just loving on this team and loving the opportunity to be able to coach this group with these phenomenal players and amazing coaches. And so it's always fitting to watch Katie play like that, because she's so capable, but really fun to watch her dish out 10 assists, to just get really, really involved. And I thought, as we shifted, you watch her defensively and you watch her tenacity. And I thought that our team did a nice job of taking a page out of her book and then going ahead and upping their game too.
A huge thank you to Allison Pullman and just the Drake athletic staff for being able to really allow me to cover this team and be able to interview coaches and players after every game. So really appreciate that. Thank you, Coach. Thank you to Drake. But let's get into that slow first quarter. You had Indiana State, a team that is sitting with only 4 wins on the season, go into a Knapp Center and jump out to a 7-0 lead in the first 7 minutes. And Drake looked confused. Indiana State couldn't miss. They were hitting, shots near the coach's box from beyond the arc. But Pullman calls a timeout really quick, like I think 7.5 minutes to go. Calls that timeout, and Drake proceeds to go on a 13-4 run, and it just woke up Drake. And that's just part of experience. That is part of what makes Coach so special, is she understands this team and has been around these players for so long. She can call those timeouts, and you see quick, effective changes and adjustments made by the team right away. And so Drake goes on a 13-4 run. Dinnebeer, I think, scored 8 of those 13. And like we heard from her last week when talking about just her huge performance in senior day, she mentioned how, in the first half she was getting, upset at Missouri State, but then she realized that her team needed her to score, and just understanding that there had to be points up. You kind of saw that switch flip for her last night as well against Indiana State, where all of a sudden she wasn't, overthinking the defense. She was just taking her opportunities and being effective with those opportunities. But 13-4 run. Second quarter, Indiana State continues to keep it close. They led after the first quarter, led for most of the second quarter, but you're seeing the adjustments. You're seeing this Drake offense get back into their rhythm and really play their style of Drake basketball, which included basically it was Dinnebeer able to get into the paint, Becker able to get into the paint, feeding it down low to Anna Miller, which then, in pure Drake style, that causes defenses, when you score 66 points in the paint like Drake did last night, it forces defenses to close in the paint, double team Miller, double team Becker, and it leaves open incredible three-point shooters like Abby Alsma, who put up 10-plus points, again, who I cannot wait to see take over and be a leader for this team next season. But you have Abby Alsma continue to dominate. Then you leave Katie Dinnebeer wide open, which every time she touches the ball, you're expecting something great. So you just have all these amazing shooters out on the edge too, as well as great post play and paint play from the Drake Bulldogs. And so Drake doesn't get a lead until Abby Alsma hits a three-pointer with about 4.5 minutes to go in the game. And after that, Drake took control. They did not look back. And in those final 4.5 minutes of the first half, they finished that second quarter on a 16-2 run, outscored Indiana State here on the box score. In that second quarter, they outscored them 26-14. And from there, Drake just took over. Indiana State was still making shots. Indiana State, a team, like we kept saying, not a great shooting team, shot 68% in the first quarter. Did get, kind of beat up in that second quarter, only shooting 33. 45% in the third, and finished the game shooting 43% and 52% from beyond the arc. I know Pullman was very, very upset with the defensive performance when guarding the three-point line. 11 made threes on 21 attempts for the Sycamores. Dinnebeer, when we asked her kind of like what coach said during that first time out that really flipped the switch and changed the offensive pace. She didn't even mention anything about offense. Dinnebier just kind of laughed at Tommy Birch and I and went, guard someone, put your hand up. And I mean, there's some truth to that. But also, it's one of those games where, could have Drake played better defense? 100%. And I think the players will agree with that. I think the coaches will agree with that. Giving up 11 3-pointers, something was a little off on the defensive end. That being said, Indiana State is a good team, but man, they do not typically hit 11 threes. So it was one of those nights, too, where when they're hitting, 10 steps behind the 3-point line, I mean, it's just their night then when shooting the ball. But unfortunately for Indiana State, they have one of their best offensive performance. But again, what separates Drake is their veteranship, their seniority, their just continuity. So many players on that team can take over. Becker with 20 points. You had Dinnebier, who was dominant with 35. Miller, again, I think her offensive game just all around has been one of the most improved players these past 4 years. Just you had a handful of assists from her that, a year or two ago, you don't see Anna Miller making those kind of passes. And like we've said all year long, her ability to stretch the floor and get more comfortable with that 3-point shot, again, is huge. The only criticism I have of Anna Miller is when she gets the ball, she looks to put it on the floor right away. And I think it's just a rhythm thing. And hey, again, she continues to dominate. I understand that criticizing someone who is one of the best players on the team is tough, but it's just a little thing I noticed I think stronger defenses like Missouri State might pick up on. So I want to see her start getting it, high point it, and just turn and go to the basket. But Anna Miller, I think her defensive performance has always been great. She's one of the best shot blockers in the game, in the conference for sure. But that's just a little tweak I would like to see in her game. But with that being said, just Drake's ability to overcome adversity and, be able to bounce back from a loss again. This team bounces back better than most. And here's Coach Allison Pullman talking to me and Tommy Birch about just their ability and kind of that's a key to why Drake has been so successful is because they don't think about the past, whether it's slow start in the first quarter against Indiana State or just coming off an emotional loss against Missouri State. Here's Drake head coach Allison Pullman on just the ability to overcome adversity.
There's two things. I think it's experience, and I think as the year goes on, that's what teams gain, and then also maturity. And so just being in those situations and fully knowing that you have the ability to control what you can control and make adjustments.
So again, a huge thank you to Allison Pullman for letting me do this and be able to cover this team. I was not with this team when the season started. I was covering Iowa State, and then some changes happen and take a month to kind of get everything set up. And so I didn't start truly covering these games until early January. And Drake welcomed me in with arms wide open, and Coach has been more than fantastic. Really appreciate what Drake and head coach Allison Pullman has done for me. Also the players, too. Players have been wonderful. But speaking of players, I know not too long ago I talked about Katie Dinnebier and why she should be the Missouri Valley Conference Player of the Year. I still, of course, believe that wholeheartedly. But I think now, just after the performances she has had to end the season and end her career at Drake, she has to be talked about on a national scale, at least recognized. Because do I believe she'll win National Player of the Year? I don't. But do I believe on a national scale she deserves to be talked about? Absolutely. And I'm going to go through, where she sits in her conference, but also talk about what she has done compared to the national leaders that separates herself. So last night, let's start off there. She scores 35 points. That was the 8th time this season she has put up 30 or more points in a single game. That far exceeds anyone else on a national level right now. And, some people may look at her and go, yeah, but look at the competition she's playing compared to those on top of the rankings in the nation. And I understand that criticism, but it's not like Katie Dennebeer only puts up 30 plus against 4-win teams. No, when she had her opportunities against top teams that she was able to play, she took advantage. Against a 5-0 Iowa team, she scored 40 points at home and then put up 39 points on the road in a hostile Hilton Coliseum against an undefeated and then ranked number 8 Iowa State team. She put up 39. So she continues to just put up these numbers. And in the last 5 games, Katie Dennebeer has averaged 29.8 points per game, 5 rebounds a game, and 7.5 assists over her last 5 games. And if you go over to the national rankings and national stats, right now, Latson from Florida State is leading the country in points per game, but is only averaging 25 in her last 5. So Dennebeer is taking advantage of her opportunities and on a national scale is outperforming the top performer so far this season. And again, do I think she wins National Player of the Year? I don't. I just think nationally they need to start talking about Katie Dennebeer from Drake University. And so, again, a huge thank you to Drake, a huge thank you to Coach Pullman. It's been awesome to be able to cover this women's team. And again, we'll start covering them from afar to finish out the season. I wish I could go down to Evansville and watch that tournament. I think it's going to be a great tournament. But just, again, with how things are set up, we just won't be able to. But we will be covering them from afar and truly do appreciate everything the coaches and the program have done for Media Row. And so let's catch a breath here real quick and then move forward to the Drake men's basketball game. That game coming up on Sunday at 2 o'clock against Missouri State. Missouri State, a team that the starting 5, I've said this constantly, starting 5 is really talented. They just don't have depth. And it benefits Missouri State going up against Drake because Drake, again, has players on the bench and Cale Combs, Isaiah Howard, and Banks that can take over. But it's not like Drake is a super deep team. And that's why these two teams, the last time they met, they went into overtime. Drake on the road able to win 69-62. But before that, I mean, it was a barn burner all game long. But going into this game, Drake has secured that first seed. I mean, they're the regular season champs. They are the first seed in Arch Madness. They'll play that. That means they'll play at noon on Friday, and now they have a great opportunity to just finish this season with a win at home. And it's going to be weird because you're going to lose all these seniors and starters. I mean, Mascari is going to be gone. Abreu will be gone. Isaiah Jackson will be gone. 3 out of your 5 starters gone at the end of this season. But Missouri State on the road has been awful. 1-11 on the road. They're 9-21 overall. Again, a team that will give Drake a hard time. And their size kind of concerns me, but again, when does size not concern you as a Drake fan? 5 players over 6'7", but they don't utilize that size as well. And really, the starters are a smaller group, which will be a good matchup with Drake also being a smaller group, with their tallest player being 6'8". But last time out, Drake won by 7 in overtime. Michael Osei Bonsu, 24 points. Nervous about him always because he may be only 6'4", but he's a big, big, big center. And I think the strength he has will be able to kind of bully Cam Maniau a little bit. Maniau's a great defender, and that's his sweet spot. That's what separates himself. But Manuel offensively now, it's one of those where watching the games live, you're like, man, Manuel just hasn't been there offensively. But then you look at his numbers, and it's not too bad. He's 4 of 8 from the field in the last 2 games, so shooting 50%. But when you watch those games, it just feels like he's kind of leaving opportunities around that 3 to 4 feet range near the rim. And again, it will be a tough matchup. Bonsu is a big guy and will be able to utilize his strength to combat the size advantage that Manuel has. But in a picture-perfect world, of course, you want Drake to dominate this game, to give starters a rest, which, again, McCollum doesn't really rest his starters. In that game against UIC, when Drake was up, 20, I mean, Sturts didn't come out until the final 3 minutes or whatever it was. So the starters don't typically get a rest, but man, final game of the year, dominate this one and try to get some extra rest because Arch Madness is going to be a lull on the starting group. So it'll be interesting to see what happens Sunday. I don't think Drake blows out Missouri State by any means, just because Missouri State, that starting 5 is going to compete with the Drake starting 5. At Drake's advantage, they actually utilize their bench. While it may be a shorter depth group than we're typically used to seeing, Missouri State just doesn't have really anyone to come off the bench and put up some numbers. So maybe not another overtime game. I'm hoping not another overtime game, but I think Drake comes out victorious on this one, ends the year with a win at home, and then gets a nice few days off before heading down to St. Louis to start Arch Madness, which we're 6 days away here from heading down to St. Louis. So really excited about that one. Drake, you and I at 2 o'clock tomorrow for the women. Make sure to follow along with us on social media to cover that game. Should be an exciting one. Maya McDermott, Katie Dennebeer one last time in the regular season. Hopefully they meet in Evansville. That'd be fun. But they meet up one more time, experience another great rivalry between 2 players, between 2 in-state teams, and between 2 great coaches. And then Sunday, we have Drake and Missouri State at 2 o'clock as well. But before we wrap up today's show, there's one more. It's a national story, not a Drake, Missouri Valley story, a national story that I want to touch on because you guys know I'm big into golf. Love golf. And now that we're starting to see the sun and no more snow on the ground right now, that itch is getting really bad. I need to get out, hit a few golf balls, whether that's just at a driving range or actually trying to get a legitimate round in. But been watching a bunch of golf. And did you guys see my guy, Jake Knapp, make some history? Shot a 59 in the Kazakh Classic. One of only 15 golfers to ever do it in a PGA Tour event. And again, that guy has the smoothest swing in the PGA. It is a beautiful sight to see. And he seems cool too. Like the PGA did a cool, kind of follow him around for a day. And he just talks about how, one, he hates his golf swing, which for a guy like me who gets excited when he shoots a 90 at Grandview, it blows me away that he would watch his swing and go, ugh. But that's the difference. That's why he shoots a 59 and I shoot a 95 on average. But so you learn that about him, learn a little bit about his personal life, and then he's just a dude. Like, he brings up how every night he makes sure to hop on Discord and play with his buddies in video games. Like, that's me. That's what I do. I make sure to hang out with my guys and, play dumb games for a little bit once in a great while. Like, that's so cool to see this, very successful golfer who has a great future ahead of him just still be a normal dude. Like, he works on his game constantly, but it is nice to see, when Tiger is on a different level than everyone else. He's the Jordan, right? But it is cool to see someone who has good success and is just kind of like a guy. That's why we all fell in love in that first season of Full Swing with Damon too, because he was just a dude. They may not win, 4 or 5 Masters like Tiger does, but it is still cool to see them just be a guy. And so that was a cool video, but watching him play in that Kazakh Classic was awesome. It was really, really good golf. Is so fun to watch. Yeah, is it fun to watch those U.S. Opens where the rough, could hide a baseball? Are those fun? Yeah, it was a British Open fun with the 6-foot sand traps, absolutely. But it is also fun to just watch a golfer dominate. It's one of the main reasons I became a Rory fan so young, because when he was, 17, 18, when he won that Masters by like 12 strokes as a young kid, that was a good golf, and it was fun to watch. So just wanted to touch a little bit on Jake Knapp, because I know the last time we talked about golf, he was one of the guys I was excited to watch for. I think it was that Genesis Invitational that we were talking about. So wanted to hit on Jake Knapp's 59. He's back playing today in round 2. I'll probably talk about him more on Twitter, so follow me at Justin_C Miller for golf updates too, along with Drake. But really appreciate everyone here today following along. Appreciate you following along this week. I know I'm stretching out this deep tease, but I promise some really, really great news about the podcast coming on Monday. And with this news, it wouldn't have been possible without you guys. So seriously, means the world that you guys continue to like, subscribe, and comment. Really helps out and means the world. So thank you all so much. Wrapping up this week on Media Row. We'll see you on Monday to reveal the great news at 2 o'clock.